And happy Father's Day. And my topic is the Father within, but I'm going to talk about within and our real living fathers too. My daddy, he probably didn't know. He probably would be surprised to hear me say, "You are a light in the world," but he really, really was. So a little bit about Albert T. Ostberg. He was born in 1905 in Cleveland, died in, and I'm huffing and puffing here, died in Chicago in 1979. Child of Swedish immigrants, engaged in his 20s to a lovely girl who died before they married, so he was single when in his 30s he moved with a couple of buddies to Chicago for work. He got just a couple months shy of his 40th birthday, he was drafted into the Army Air Corps for World War II. And he thought he was going to be a clerk typist, and he ended up driving a 2-ton supply truck across North Africa and Italy. And then when he returned after the war back to his job in Chicago, they had taken on a new employee while he was gone, and that was my mom. Yes. So they married. I was born in 1950, just 1 month short of his 45th birthday. And Daddy was the most loving person I ever knew. Some of his loves included music. He loved big band jazz and Dixieland jazz, and especially clarinet. Before the war, he'd go down to the ballrooms in Chicago on the weekend for the big bands touring through. Folks like Benny Goodman. Ooh. Lawrence Welk on TV was big in our house, specifically because of Pete Fountain on the clarinet doing the Dixieland stuff. Oh, yes. Daddy loved sports. Any spectator sport in the whole world, if it was available, he was watching it. The only physical sport he was doing by the time I was around was golf, but he loved it. But on TV, it ranged from golf to prize fighting. No filters there at all. He did object to ice hockey because when they got rowdy and started fights on the ice, he didn't feel that was true to the sport. He was about the sport. And then during baseball season, he'd have one game on the TV, another game on the radio while he read the sports page, all at the same time, multitasking. And if it was a game between Cleveland and Chicago, he was on the phone long distance to his sister Edith so they could razz each other about what was going on in the game. And then most of all, Daddy loved people. Loved and trusted, wide open. Door-to-door salesmen made their month at our house because he loved them and he wanted them to succeed. So he'd buy whatever they were selling. It was part of being Daddy. And then when I was first-time mother living with my parents while my husband was in Southeast Asia in the Vietnam conflict, I'd set the baby in his plastic carrier on the breakfast table so that Daddy could play with the baby while he ate breakfast. And I remember my dad saying in this voice just full of joy and wonder, "I didn't expect to be a father, and now I get to be a grandfather." All right. So I'm telling you all of that because, as you can see, I am very blessed to have a father that was a really good internal model for growing up in the Lutheran Sunday school and being told God is my father. Well, I had a great, just put it in place, loving father. A lot of us don't get that. A lot of us get a very mixed bag or an absent unavailable or downright awful. And I learned very early on as a practitioner to be very cautious and caring with any client who came to me. First, to establish whether it was even okay to use the word God, because a lot of folks had such a negative definition of God that it'd blow the whole connection right away. Second, to be very careful about the pronoun he. I'm still not a big fan of the pronoun he for God. We need another pronoun because he and she and it are none of them big enough for what God is. Mary Baker Eddy of Christian Science may have had a really good suggestion when she talks about Mother, Father, God. But some of us, our mothers weren't that wonderful a role model either. So here we are having to work on our own internal idea of the essence of, in this case today, because it's Father's Day, the internal father. What do we want that to be? And what do we want to own within ourselves? Because we all have it. We all have all of it, the archetypal mother and father and child. On the spiritual level, on the level of understanding how creation even functions, we have the masculine as the creative energy. You can see it in our Science of Mind symbol, one over here, one over here. The upper spirit, thought, word is a masculine energy. The middle section is the nurturing, birthing, creative medium that is the mother, that is the feminine. And the result, what shows up, is the child, if you will, the manifestation, the physical, in the world life going on. That's at the metaphysical, creative pattern level. And then we also have the psychological, spiritual level of what does it mean to be a father, to exhibit and use and create with our masculine energies and our feminine energies and our child energy, because we've all got it all. Ernest Holmes, founder of our philosophy, author of Science of Mind, says, God is our heavenly Father and our spiritual mother, the breath of our life. God is a changeless reality in which we live and move and have our being. So all of this energy that I'm talking about is everything around us and who we are. We are father and mother and child. And the Father, Mother, God lives itself through us and for us and as us. And Jesus knew this. Jesus knew it well and spoke to it all the time. I and the Father are one. The Father in me doeth the work. But I don't think we necessarily notice or haven't learned how genuinely revolutionary even calling God Father was. I mean, we know Jesus was a revolutionary, teaching love instead of Jewish legal code as the way to stay on track in life. Yes, that's revolutionary, but the word Father itself is revolutionary. I mean, you take the Hebrew God, even if you conceive of that as a father, it was pretty scary as fathers go, right? And apt to be a little bit impatient and possibly inconsistent. None of that is a really great father model. But Jesus was comfortable saying, my Father, and meaning it. And then if you really look at his language, the Aramaic word that he used wasn't father, it was Abba, which, as pretty much every language, has the kind of baby talk daddy word. There's Abba, like Papa, like Dada. Jesus was saying, Papa and I are one. So much closer, so much more loving, so much more willing to know the loving Father living in him, through him. That's pretty remarkable. I think we need to remember that. I think we need to own that for ourselves. And then what do we do with the outer Father? What do we do to embody and reconcile and love however that showed up in our lives for us? Whether my daddy Al or and my daddy wasn't perfect. There were his habits I won't go to because I want to stay with the love today, but it wasn't perfect. No human has it all together as they walk through their days. Another story of an imperfect father is told by an author named Cheryl Strayed, Strayed. I don't know for sure how she pronounces it. I'm guessing Strayed. When Cheryl was 26, she walked the entire Pacific Coast Trail alone. She started out in the Mojave Desert in California and walked to the Bridge of the Gods in Oregon. And then journaled and then turned it into a book that she titled Wild. One story that Cheryl tells within that book is of more than 50 days out on the trail. She met a young man, no, not a young man, a young boy, who announced that he didn't have a father. And she's in conversation with him and then moves on down the trail. But by evening, by when she sat down to journal, she had all of her own absent father stuff poked and going on because of that conversation. And she says, I didn't know my own father's life. He was there but invisible. A shadow beat in the woods. A fire so far away it's nothing but smoke. That was my father, the man who hadn't fathered me. It amazed me every time, again and again and again, of all the wild things, his failure to love me the way he should have has always been the wildest thing of all. And then she started working on not needing to be defined by that. She put it this way. But on that night, as I gazed out over the darkening land, 50-some nights out on the PC Trail, it occurred to me that I didn't have to be amazed by him anymore. There were so many other amazing things in the world. They opened up inside of me like a river. Like I didn't know I could take a breath, and then I breathed. I laughed with the joy of it, and the next moment I was crying my first tears on the PCT. I cried, and I cried, and I cried. I wasn't crying because I was happy. I wasn't crying because I was sad. I wasn't crying because of my mother or my father or my ex. I was crying because I was full of those 50-some days on the trail, and of the 9,760 days that had come before them, too. I was entering. I was leaving. She was leaving old concepts behind. She was leaving old stories and crystallized unhappiness behind. She was stepping into her own life and her own amazingness. She was stepping into the Father within. So no matter what our story is, no matter how good or how awful, what if we could set that aside and step into ourselves? We don't have to let the story go. We don't have to pretend it never happened. But it doesn't have to run us. It doesn't have to be where we come from. We can step into a new place that we come from this moment forward. We can make our own inner truth of the goodness that we are be that idea that, as Ernest says, is the father of the thing. What idea is central that we want to live from now? I invite you to just think about how you would step into that, what it would feel like, what it would open up, how it would empower you to be your true self in the world. That's my charge to you today. And with that in mind, let's move into treatment together. I know there's only one life, one power, one presence, one wholeness. And sometimes we call it Father or Mother or God, Spirit or Source, light or love. No matter what name we give it, it always says, yes, I am that for you right now. Yes, I am that and more. More than we can imagine, more than we can contain. And yet, right here, right now, as we imagine and contain and wish to use, to live, to connect with, to understand as the root and core of our being. One life that's the only life, and if it's the only life, then yes, it's my life now. My life, the life of each person in this room, the life of every person that we remember and love and hold in our hearts, life of every person on this planet, whether they're in the physical with feet on the ground right now, or whether they have passed on, or whether they haven't been born yet. Every life, God's life, living itself. I know that's the truth. And because I know that's the truth, it's from that knowing I speak my word right now And I will speak it for myself, and if the words feel right to you, own them for yourselves as I speak. I know and claim the power and clarity and purity and enthusiasm of what I call the Father within, that creative energy, that willingness to speak, to act, to step into my life. I know and claim that that Father energy is creating my experience of my life in this moment and every moment. I know and claim that that energy makes the way straight before me into a life of creativity and possibility and good. And I know the feminine energy within me and all around me, that Mother God takes that creative idea and nurtures it, contains it, gestates it into its full and beautiful expression. I trust this process. I absolutely trust that this is the way God works, through me, for me, in me, as me now. And I am grateful. I am grateful for how good it feels to know that in this moment, to feel that energy in motion in this moment. And I am grateful for all the ways, the expected and unexpected ways, it shows up in my outer experience because I have set it in motion, because I have spoken my word. And I know it is good and very good. And in this gratitude, I release my word. I just let it go. I let it be. As together we say, and so it is. Thank you.